Welcome. In this class, we will talk about some of the major developments that were marked in the Down to Earth edition for 2023 January. The first is fostering farming and earning livelihood. In the region of Uttarakhand, Pauri district, there are two batches which are grown. The first is with the fruits, vegetables, pulses. The second is with the crops like almond, apple, walnut, cardamom, and other saplings. Now, farmers are encouraged to do so. Feel Good Charitable Trust has been working for it, and there are two non-profit organizations, Uttaranchal Association of North America and Save India Farmers. The next is the COVAX, which is the Vaccine Global Access Program. From that, Gavi has been phasing out support for 37 different middle and low income nations. It would be supporting 54 other nations. Now, Gavi has focused that it would change its focus from the vaccination for COVID-19 to the routine immunization and vaccine. The reason it has been cited that only 25% of the low-income countries have got vaccination for the COVID. However, 70% of the world has received at least one dose. The next is Africa's renewable energy resources. Power Summit, a US International Development Finance Corporation, has talked about putting in funds for development of renewable sources in the region of Africa, and the race has been high with various conflicts in the European Union and Russia Ukraine going on. The next is the India's farmers issue, where there has been a huge rally and asking for the removal of the GST on agricultural inputs and withdrawal of the permissions for GM crops in India. The next is to save the chorus. The larva could be used for future, and for that Cryomesh technique is used. Now this is a technique which is designed to preserve the objects by keeping them frozen at a temperature of minus 196 degrees Celsius, and this is a low cost technology storing method. The next is, in India, we have seen that half of the children are nearly poisoned by lead. Lead poisoning is a serious issue. Nearly 48 national referral centers for lead projects have come for it, and the history of lead exposure is again important. Lead acid batteries, the management for that becomes important. Unleaded fuel in the vehicles came into force mandating in 2000. In 2022, the battery waste management rules were laid down, and the informal sector still does not have the right criteria. The major issues which have been faced because of it is premature birth, low birth weight, neurological problems. The intake is through mother's milk or inhaled air. The impact is on decreased activity of the enzymes that produce heme for hemoglobin, also lowering of intelligence quotient and developmental disorders. It also hampers the vitamin D metabolism if it is deposited onto the bones. The chelation, where the medicine actually binds with the lead and this facilitates the excretion through the urine, has been another important cause of concern. There are various occupational sources through which lead intake is commonly seen, which is mainly in the fields of battery work, mining, occupational disorders where plumbing, soldering, printing work are some of the common works where lead is used. Non-occupationally, again, cosmetics, then household storage batteries, household paints, contaminated soil dust are some other particles that are seen. In India, more than 23 states have higher than permissible limits of lead in the blood, which is 5 micrograms per deciliter, and this is because of the 20 occupational and household issues. If you look onto the map of India, as you can see, those marked in the red are having higher than the permissible limit. The next is biodiversity. Under the COP15 and the Convention to Biodiversity, there were the main ideas which focus on sustainable use and equitable sharing of the benefits arising from its use. Now, the most important thing is to plan a good global strategy. 30 by 30 is one such aspect. This strategy says that 30% of the land, water, air and marine areas must be protected by 2030. So far, it's 17% and 10% of the terrestrial and the aquatic area, and this was after the Aichi biodiversity targets expired in 2020. However, we are still mandating on delivering the target 3 and maintaining this 30 by 30 target. The plan is also a goal for 2050. So 30-30, that means next 30 years. We have plan for goal by 2050, which talks about sustainable use of biodiversity, maintaining the integrity of the ecosystem, fair and equitable sharing of benefits, and implementation of finance and technology. Now, what are the targets? To reduce the threats to biodiversity, reduce the invasive species risk from pollution, meet the people's need by sustainable use and benefit sharing. So legal and administrative capacities must be checked. Then we talk about tools for implementation and mainstreaming, which reduces the harmful substances, increases financial resources, ensure gender equality, and a dedicated fund that must be prepared. So target 19, which talks about increasing the financial resources. Then we have private industries and initiatives under high ambition coalition for nature and people. Leaders pledge for nature is another important aspect. The next is plastic waste. The plastic waste is projected to triple by 2060. Two-thirds of the waste is seen from packaging, manufacturing, and textile. So polyester, nylon fabric, acrylic fabrics, all of those are what? They are polymer based, plastic based. So plastic has been extensively used in textile as well. Now, the global treaty to end plastic pollution by 2024 concluded under the Punta de Este, Uruguay. This meet talked about the glimpses for the next 2 years and what it should be. The industrial representatives, the public health professionals, environmentalists all came under one branch, and the idea was to restrain the consumption of plastic, to ensure a circular global economy, and a good management and recycling of plastic waste. For example, Saudi Arabia has insisted that oil producing countries should consider while negotiating certain treaties. There are group of friends of waste pickers who serve as a platform for exchange and dialogue consultation. Now, fake fabric, as it is called, is the fabric that is produced as a byproduct of petrochemicals, and polyester, acrylic, nylon textiles constitute 60% of this fake fabric. This use has increased nearly 900% in the last 40 years. And in India, Reliance Industries is one of the most important producers of virgin polyester, and also a major recycling center is India. The recycling centers are at Panipat, Ludhiana, Ahmedabad, Surat, Rajkot, Gandhinagar, and Samana. 17% of the waste from the textile is dumped at Bhandwari landfill in Gurugram. Now, this fashion has become problematic because the extract comes from petrochemical industries. Reliance, as we said, is one of the largest producers. Now, there could be discarding of the virgin polyester that could be done. Now, when the clothes are made from it, people buy 60% of the clothes which they were buying 15 years ago, and the life they are using it is just half they used to use it previously. So a lot of recycling, lot of landfill and incineration comes into play. Plastic has become a fashion. It started in 1940 with nylon as a petroleum based fiber by DuPont, and it replaced the silk in women hosiery. Later on, after the hippie movement, colorful fashion through polyester started. There were leisure suits which were built. Later on, warm fleece jackets of polyester started to come. And finally, we have the sustainable fashion badge with the plastic pollution that is running in. So polyesters are to stay as the natural fabrics, but we definitely need to have more better way through which recycling and management could be done. So collection of the textile waste from open dumping sites, landfillings, door-to-door collection of the municipal solid waste. Previously, there was this exchange of clothes for utensils which was done. So that's another one way which could be done. In Brazil, Lula da Silva's government has returned. Probably it's because of his charisma, his ability to reach the marginalized and the poor section, and establish a good spectrum where people could actually look onto the future of Brazil. So Bolsonaro, however, had a good following, but still there is rebuilding of the political constitution and reintroduction of the policies which are required. The next is, there are various surveys which are done for crop intensification on frogs and reptiles. Mainly salamanders and tadpoles of the frogs help in controlling the mosquitoes and feed on the larvae of it. They also improve the soil quality and aeration, help in dispersal and pollination. But the recent study of IUCN has said that nearly 1500 species of frog and 800 species of reptile in the world are critically endangered or endangered due to agricultural management practices changes, and therefore this has created a what we call as domino effect, a intra-guild predation. That means where one species feed onto the same prey, and therefore the competitors feed on one another. So this is what is known as intra-guild predation, which has become common as the frog population becomes less, the arthropods population gets reduced, and this is what is seen. Now, if there is reduction of both the predators, then there would be a natural suppressing of crop pest abundance. So pest would start to grow, and this was one of the studies that was shown. So there has to be proper methods to optimize the existing farmlands and maintain the biodiversity. The next is another important aspect, which is known as hemang. Hemang is an ingredient in most of the Asian cuisines. It is sour and salty as well. In September, white creamy flowers on the hemang trees are seen. They are known as Rhasis chinasis, commonly seen in the regions of Manipur, and then later they are called as September beauty. By November, December, they have red fruits, and then they are used for medicinal purpose, antioxidant for diarrhea, dysentery. They are also used for GI problems. They are also used for treatment of kidney stones because they help in dissolving the calcium oxalate. There have been various studies which have been done by the Central Food Technology Research Institute, Mysuru, and Academy of Scientific and Innovation Research at Ghaziabad, talking about the benefits of the hemang fruit. There are other parts of the fruit of the tree, such as the leaves, roots, bark and stem, which are also used for therapeutic purposes. For oral diseases, inflammation, the compounds have been isolated from it, which have a capability to suppress the HIV-1. So therefore, the extracts are extremely useful. It is also used in one of the herbal shampoos when it is boiled with rice water, and this is known as chinghi. Similarly, not only in Manipur, in China also, hemang is known as yafumu. Ya means salt in Mandarin. This is added to fruit to give it a salty taste, and it is commonly used by the Hani community near the Naban River Watershed National Reserve Park. It is also mixed with jaggery to have a sweet digestive candy. The next is the end of the tenure. So year 2022 was deadline for most of the government's grant scheme. The Amrit Kal that we say now has the next years to come in, but so far what we have seen is rising inflation, devaluation of the currency, widespread recession, and there are various issues which are being raised. The next is monopoly in the farming sector. So the European Union's free trade deal has forced many of the Indian farmers to actually work for the interest of the breeders. Now this is one of the ways through which we have seen that there are various traditional red and green foliage which are widely used in Christmas decorations. They are native to Mexico, and they have been brought to US by the ambassador from Mexico, and they have been named by various ways. In India, there were potato growers in Gujarat, and they were asked or challenged by PepsiCo for violating the IPR. The farmers were using the variety illegally, and that was where the patent infringement was actually seen. So there are an international union for protection of new varieties of plant, and this is a regulatory system to protect the plant species. It was first passed in 1961 by the European breeding companies and then revised 3 times in 1991. The most important and strict guidelines were added to it. So New Zealand is one example where these rights act have been actually taken into consideration. Similarly, there have been various other countries which have taken this into consideration. The next important topic is lantana. Lantana camara, as it is called as, is one of the shrubs which grow in a well-lit area, and it's a creeper in a forest area. Wherever it grows, it actually is wild, native to Latin America, grows at a very fast pace, and this is actually a weed which is spread to most of the country. As we could see in the diagram, only the blue sections, as you can see, are the areas where it is absent, but all the red sections are the sections where lantana is seen. And it is actually, if you look onto the two images here, in the shaded sunlit areas the leaves are relatively small, in the shaded areas the leaves grow bigger. Now this plant has been known for reducing the capability of the soil for fertility. It takes up the water very fast, destroys the native species, invades the area, and also creates a region where extreme fire events could be seen. India uses the cut root stock method to reduce the impact of lantana, and is spending nearly 18,700 USD dollars per square kilometer every year to check this. There has been this technology, which is the cut root stock technology, which is expensive, labor intensive, and time consuming. 6 of the 13 species have negative correlation with the density of the lantana. Where the density has increased, lantana has decreased. Now the 6 species are very important, and you must know. So this is something you must remember. In Indore, India's first bio-CNG plant has created the Indore buses which run on the bio-CNG technology, and this reduces the burning of waste, phases out the fossil fuels, and reduces methane emission. Then we have some other important developments. Net Zero Emission Bill 2022 introduced in Rajya Sabha, which aims to achieve the net zero emissions by 2070. Manrega scheme, which was introduced, which aims to amend the rule to 200 days of guaranteed employment. Similarly, the vehicle scrappage policy talks about phasing out the old vehicles which are unfit by imposing higher registration and introducing scrapping facilities. We also have seen the Arctic area is getting more rainier, and there is shift in season. The ice has been seen on roads, and accessibility has been cut to the region. We have also talked about the fusion reaction, the Lawrence Livermore Research Laboratory. Already we have covered that in separate lecture. Similarly, India's Academy for Pediatrics has talked about introducing 5 vaccines to our vaccination schedule, and those are typhoid, chickenpox, hepatitis A, influenza, and Japanese encephalitis. So again, important. There has been recategorization by the ORANs, and this is in the regions around Jaisalmer. To maintain the biodiversity and the natural habitat of the great Indian bustard bird, a critically endangered bird under the IUCN classification, and marking the excessive development in the region, because that is putting a threat to the biodiversity in that area. So those were some of the important topics that we have discussed as per Down to Earth. So Down to Earth comes every fortnight. We would be covering the next edition of Down to Earth in the next lecture. So stay tuned, and below are the links useful for you, along with the handouts for what we have discussed in the today's lecture. Wish you very good luck.